Hey guys, this is Michael with the Tennessee Survivalist again, and it's been a while since we shot any videos. My first few weren't very good video quality. Um, I'm not a director, guys, survivalist. But at any rate, I hope you learned something from them. We're going to start doing some more videos, give a lot more information, demonstrate a lot more skills, do some gear reviews. All of it kind of based on common man's perspective, because I personally don't have the money for really high dollar gear. That doesn't mean that I can't enjoy myself and collect good survival skills and be ready when the poo goes flying off that fan without spending tons of money. We're going to start off today with a new tarp shelter configuration that I've devised. And you may be tired of seeing tarp shelter videos. My first one wasn't all that great. This one's based on that design, but I've made some improvements to it. To lead off my new series that I'm calling Backyard Bushcraft. In this series, we're going to be covering various different types of shelters. We're going to be covering different types of fire construction and fire lays. A lot of gear reviews, and not just reviews, but actually showing you how to use these pieces of gear, telling you why I choose this style of gear for my bug out bag or my go bag. I don't just build this stuff up for survival. I use it every chance I get, from camping to just playing around in my backyard like I'm doing today. Hopefully you'll get a lot of information, learn something out of all these. Give me plenty of feedback. I welcome any information you may have to give me. Sit tight, guys. I'll be right back. We'll get some gear together and we're going to start building this thing. Okay, guys. Getting ready to put this thing together. I'm going to go over some of the supplies that is necessary in addition to the tarp. Now, this tarp is just a cheap poly tarp from Walmart or wherever in sporting goods department. At most big box stores will have them. I think this one was about $8 or $9. It's a 8 by 10. A lot of people prefer cell nylon or canvas, as you heard me talk about in some other videos. But truthfully, if you're in a survival situation, these are cheap, they're fairly light, they work, and if it was long term, you're probably not going to want to live in a tarp shelter anyway. If you had to stay in the outdoors for a prolonged period of time, this will provide you temporary shelter until you can build or acquire more adequate, more solid shelter. So the main things you're going to have to need is the tarp. You can see stretched out on the ground and behind me. You're going to need a few pieces of paracord or bank line or some type of cordage. I'm using paracord for this. I've got several pieces already made out of the little loops. You'll see why in a minute. It doesn't matter how long, just using scrap pieces is what I've done. You're also going to need a few tent stakes. These are aluminum ones made by Coghlan's. They're decent, they're fairly lightweight, fairly sturdy. They do rattle around a lot. Some people prefer ABS plastic. Those are a little lighter, they're almost as sturdy, but they take up a lot more space. You don't even have to have these. You can just cut you some sticks and make your own stakes in the wild bushcraft style. But for the sake of the video, and for the simple fact that if you had to set up an emergency shelter, you may need to do it in a hurry. Anything you don't have to cut and make is that much better. So I'm going to get up and go back here. Hopefully you'll be able to hear me, and we're going to start putting this together. As I said, the tarp is laid out. It's 8 by 10. And I lay it out wide for this configuration, which means that I'm standing at the back, the front is facing the camera. So it's 8 foot from me to the front and 10 foot wide. You can lay it out either way you wanted, but using this style of layout will give you the most room inside this tarp shelter. This tarp shelter will be big enough for 2 people. That's what I like about it. My wife likes to imagine me sleeping in a shelter and throwing her out underneath a cedar tree. So what we're going to do is we're going to use 2 of these loops. Got a loop here. We're going to go to the grommets and attach these loops to the grommet. Now instead of going to the corners, I'm going to come in 1 grommet hole. On this side here, I'm just running the loop through the grommet, back through itself. The reason I'm doing this is a lot of these stakes will not fit in the grommet hole. Then I'm going to take the stake, put it into the next loop. Again, not all the way on the corner, but come in one hole. The grommets are laid out a little weird on this. I'm not actually going to be able to come in one hole. I'm going to have to come in two holes, it looks like. On this side, that's the price you pay with some of these cheaper tarps. You can't always lay them out the way you want to. So we're going to modify this as we go. Show you how to adapt and how to overcome. I don't know how this is going to work out. We're going to try it. We'll come back over here where I previously told you to come in one grommet hole. I'm going to come in two. This is going to make the shelter a little smaller on the inside and shaped a little different, but it'll work the same nonetheless. And you can't ever tell, you may end up being in a situation, especially with one of these cheap tarps, where you tear a grommet out if you're using a cheap one. You may have to do this even if you didn't want to. In my case, I knew that the tarp was misconfigured and I set it up backwards. Didn't mean to, but I did. Okay, now we've got that staked out. Again, you can go, you never want to go to the corners. You always want to come in one, or in this case, two holes. It's going to make this wedge shape, it's going to make it stand a lot better. Now, we're going to come to the front. I'm going to get two more loops. I'm going to go to my outside corner. We'll put a loop in. But I'm not going to anchor it down there. What I want to do is I want to come in one grommet hole and pull it snug to my back stake, pretty much in line with that one grommet hole, and anchor it down. Now we're going to go the other side. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to take this outside grommet and the inside grommet. Put the loop through the outside. Grab the next one in. Pull it snug against its corresponding grommet in the back. Take the outside grommet and bring it in line and snug with the inside grommet. Hopefully that's not too confusing. Kind of confused myself and I know what I'm doing. If you've seen my other tarp shelter video, this is the exact same way that I laid it out. In the other configurations, people will come in and put a stick in here for a support pole. That works fine, that's quick. You've seen me do the same thing, only put a T-pole in to make it like a cross shape to get a little more headroom. What I'm going to do today is a little bit different. I'm going to make a frame out of sticks I collected in the wall to give this a little bit more headroom, a little bit more stability, and most importantly, it's going to withstand high winds and weather a lot better. So we'll take just a second to get my supplies for it over here, and I'll show you what we're going to do. Be right back. Okay guys, we're back getting ready to put this thing together. What I have done is I have, off camera, I have collected 2 or 3 limbs, as you can see, laid out on top of the tarp here, and they're cut to a specific length. Didn't actually use tape measure to measure them. I used the height of the tent, the way I wanted it set up. You'll see in a minute. I cut a crossbar, as you see right here. The only reason I debarked it is so you can note that it was the top. And just simply took some cordage. This is just some cheap nylon cordage you see here. I've done it with this instead of paracord or bank line, so you'd be easier to see in the video because it's so bright green. And lashed this top bar to the uprights. In my last video on the tarp shelter, you had a single pole in the middle, as opposed to these 2 on the side that you're about to see. And it had its ups and downs. You could set it up quickly 2 or 3 minutes, your tarp shelter is set up and you're in the dry. But if you needed to or wanted to build a fire in front of the door of your shelter, you could not do so because the pole and the guide rope holding the pole was in the way. With this, it's going to be more secure, and you have the capability of building a fire right in the mouth of the tarp shelter. So let me put this camera back on the tripod, and I'll show you what we're doing here. Okay, as I said, I took the liberty of going ahead and cutting these poles, and I've attached some more loops. The loops that I've attached here are going to the 2 grommets on the inside. They're the closest ones to the middle. If your tarp happens to have loops or grommets that are spaced differently, you'll have to experiment with that yourself and get the right layout. With these loops, I'm simply going to hook this over each of the uprights, like so. Stand my poles up where I want them. Then, I've got some longer pieces of cordage already cut. Got a loop in the end here. I'm going to put it over that. I'm going to come down at an angle. I'll show you why at an angle in a minute. We'll pull it snug. I'm going to stake it down. Get my stick here where I can stake it a little tighter. Go to the other side, do the same thing. Take one loop, put it over the top pole, come down at an angle, put the other loop around the stake, stake it down. Doesn't have to be super tight, you just want it somewhat taut. Now, you can adjust the tension on your sides simply by moving your poles around. This one may be a little short it's a little short to do like that. I'm going to have to bring it to the inside some to tighten that up. But nonetheless, it tightens that side up quite a bit. Like so. You can also come to your sides. All that's left over here, take that, tuck it to the inside. Come over to the other side, do the same thing. Do this, you can go to the inside and pull them out nice and neat. Got a dry place to lay your upper body. This, in addition with a wool blanket or whatever your sleep system is, make a great tarp setup. Now I know what you're thinking. I told you this was big enough for 2 people. It looks kind of small in here. And it is kind of small. It could be widened in the back. If the grommets were laid out better, it would be about 2 foot wider in the back, almost the width it is in the front. But even with this, you adapt, you overcome. One of my grommets was messed up, I made it work. You can still comfortably get 2 people in there. If it's cold weather, then I would have a fire built a few feet out front here with a backdrop behind it reflecting the heat in. You can come to the inside, tape out take your duct tape and a mylar blanket or space blanket, tape it to the inside with that fire built with a backdrop, kind of nestling style, and it would roll the heat off of you and reflect back down into you. If you're sleeping in something like this with 2 people and it's just too uncomfortable, sleep with your feet that way and your head to the front. Either way, this will work. Biggest things you want to remember when setting up any of your shelters is start off with, you want to look at your 3 W's. wind, water, and widowmakers. By wind, if it's hot, you may want air circulation, but you need to resist the urge of turning the face of your shelter or tent into the wind. Because if a rain shower pops up, that wind's not going to be the only thing blowing in the mouth of your shelter. You're going to have rain, you're going to have debris. If it storms, it's going to be messy. So you always want to turn the low side, the windbreak side, toward the wind. Always look for water drainage. Pick out your location and set up shelter or your tent. Make sure that you're in an area that doesn't appear to have a lot of water runoff or a lot of standing water. The only thing worse than waking up in the middle of your tent after a storm and being in a frog pond is being woke up in the middle of the night because a wet weather spring or a raging river sprung out underneath your tent from runoff water coming off the hill above you. It's pretty easy to look at your surroundings and tell where water stands or where it wouldn't stand. Kind of pan the camera over my backyard here and I'll give you some examples. If we go toward the house, you can see it goes uphill. Well, if I get up on top of that hill building a shelter, then the wind's going to catch me really badly. Now that may be good if you're trying to cool off, but it's bad if you're trying to stay warm in the winter or if you're trying to reduce damage to you or getting wet from the elements if it was to rain. If we go back toward the river back here, yes, there's a tent in the backyard too. Ignore that, please. If you go back toward the river and behind me, it goes downhill. That's going to be a water standing area. I've personally seen it covered in water whenever it rains real hard back here. So even though I didn't pick this location for this reason, this will be a perfect location because it stair steps down from here. It's higher than here. Therefore, water runoff is not a problem. Water standing is not a problem. The water runoff is going to kind of go this direction. Another thing you want to look at is what I said, widowmakers. Widowmakers are simply big dead limbs that are laying in trees over your head where everybody wants to build their shelter that could fall on you and crush your skull. Now, let's look up here. I see a limb right there that's directly over my shelter. It's not really a widowmaker, but it would put a knot on my skull if it fell. So in a survival situation, you want to look for that. If it fell sideways, it's probably not going to hurt me. It's probably not going to damage my shelter. It's only about 14 foot up. If it fell straight down the way it's hanging, that's about 3/4 of an inch, maybe 1 inch thick, about 4 foot long. I'm sure it's dead and fairly light, but it's still going to leave a knot on my skull. Now watch for things like that when you're doing, and when you practice these skills, practice that. Even though you don't necessarily have to in your backyard, you may not necessarily be sleeping in it, but if you're out in the woods, you're actually camping like this or hiking like this, those dangers are there just the same, even if it's not a survival situation, guys. Alright, well, I hope you like this video on my tarp setup. I really like this configuration. There's one other way it can be done where you can actually close the doors on the front and have doors for it, but it would either take a much larger tarp or it will be reduced to a small one-man tarp, or one-man shelter rather. I may do a video on it later. Hope you enjoyed the first episode of the Backyard Bushcrafter series. Appreciate it again. This is Michael with Tennessee Outdoorsman. Thank you for watching. God bless you all, and God bless America. Check us out on our next video.